Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. My name is Natsuyo, and thank you so much for joining me today. And this is a book launch event. Woohoo! That's really exciting, right? And here with me is my friend and colleague and the CEO and founder of Japan Business Consulting, Eric Ahorner. And he
Hi,
was nice
everyone.
enough to interview me and have a conversation about this book launch and even more. So, Eric,
Thank you
why
so
don't you
much,
introduce
Natsuyo.
yourself? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Natsuyo, for the great intro. And as people are coming into the LinkedIn Live book launch party that we have here with Natsuyo, I want to make two comments. First of all, please post any questions that you have in the chat, and we're also going to do a drawing for a book at the end. So stay till the end. And I want to briefly introduce Natsuyo. So Natsuyo Lipschutz is a globally recognized cross-cultural communication strategist, author, and speaker. As the managing principal of Aspire Intelligence, she brings a wealth of experience in helping leaders and organizations bridge cultural gaps and enhance communication effectiveness. Natsuyo is a TEDx speaker and has co-authored several books, including The Success Blueprint with Brian Tracy. With her unique blend of Japanese and American business experience, she is dedicated to empowering professionals to succeed in today's multicultural business environment. And if you have anything to do with multicultural business environments, then oh,
You're good. You're good.
I'm good. Okay,
Yeah.
I hear myself again. Hold on a second. It's as if I hear this in. I can
You're
hear a recording of
really,
what I just said. Okay, now I'm good.
you're all good.
Okay, thanks. Hold on a second. I think I have to turn off my.
Okay, while
I
you're
hear everything with a
figuring it
five
out.
second delay.
Hi, Harumi.
Hmm,
Hi, Ruth. Thank you for listening in.
that's strange.
You guys are hearing okay?
Okay,
Um,
okay.
can you,
I'm just
yeah, if there
put
is any issue, please write in a
the
comment.
following.
You
Can
sound
you
good.
still hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
all
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I cannot. Okay, let me see. So, first and foremost, what I wanted to ask you, Natsu, when we start with this, when did you first come to the US and what was your first culture shock?
Yeah, so I came to the US 29 years ago. Oh my gosh, 1995. That's a long time ago. More than half of my life I've been spending in the US. And
Hmm.
I landed a job, my first job in New York. And at that time, I thought I was speaking
Hold on a
English
second. I
pretty
think
well, but still, um, the real English was totally different. So I learned English
Okay.
like, "Hello, how are you doing? I'm
Can you
fine,
hear me
thank you.
now?
And you?" Right? Yes, I can.
I have some technical difficulties here. Hold on a second.
You're fine. You're
It's really
fine.
not, doesn't seem
Then, you know,
to
you, you know what?
work
Why
on
don't you
stream, and
mute
I have like a
yourself?
delay of a couple of seconds, which is very
Okay,
confusing.
so I'm gonna mute
Hmm.
you when I'm speaking, and I'm gonna unmute you. How's
Okay, I'm
that?
going to close.
All right. So sorry about the technical difficulty, but we're
Okay,
all
can
good
you
and
hear
we're
me
still
now?
connected, right? Yes, yes, I can.
Okay,
So
wait a
I was just
second.
saying,
Camera, audio. Okay.
yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I'm gonna yes,
Okay,
I'm gonna
my
mute
apologies.
you for a second. And I'm gonna continue. So 29 years ago I came and I was talking about my my confidence in English, but it was a false confidence, and the real live English was pretty different, right? So people would come up to me and said, "Hey, what's up?" And I would literally look up, like, what's up there? And people will say, "Oh, get out of there." And I would be like, okay, I'm leaving. What did I say? So there was a huge English issue, right? Um, but it wasn't just the English issue. It was more about the mindset. And now I'm trying to unmute you, and I can't unmute you for some reason.
I
Okay,
can
there you
unmute
go.
myself now. That should work.
Okay,
Thank you. My
okay,
apologies for the technical issues.
that's okay.
So that's
That's okay.
that's super interesting. Now, um, now you're a professional speaker, right? 29 years later. What was the path that took you that has led you to this result?
Yeah. Well, before going in there, so I was talking about the English issue, but it was more than that language. Um, the the culture shock was beyond the language issue. It was about the attitude. So especially in New York, right? Um, as Japanese, I was born and raised in Japan. So as Japanese coming into the U.S., my attitude was silence is virtue. Just wait and see. But especially in New York or in foreign countries, you have to have an act and create attitude instead of wait and see attitude. So you have to be proactive, and you have to carve your own path and push boundaries and actively shape your future rather than passively waiting, observing, and reacting, right? So that was a huge, huge culture shock. So I thought, well, if I speak English well enough, I can get by. Totally not. So I was very, very wrong. So now I'm 29 years later, I'm a professional speaker. And for those who are not familiar with professional speaking, um, as a professional speaker, you have your specialized topic and you give keynote speeches, or it could be corporate trainings or workshops, and that's your business, right? So I do that in a foreign language. So that's pretty brave. And I used to hate, hate is a strong word, but I used to hate public speaking, especially in English. But on the first day of my MBA, everyone had to introduce themselves. And as I was waiting for my turn, I was sweating and I was rehearsing in my head what to say, how to say it, what to start with. And when my turn came, I totally blanked out, and everyone's eyes were on me, and I was sweating. And since then, I hated public speaking. and But in MBA, you have a lot of projects and presentations, team presentations. So I voluntarily took the shortest part in the team presentation. And if I got any questions, I would go, "Oh, Eric can answer that question," and I would avoid it. But I realized that I needed to overcome this, and especially if I want to be successful in a different culture. So I joined Toastmasters. That's where I met Eric. And in Toastmasters, I started to compete in speech contests, and I won some contests, and I started to get interested. So I studied more, and I got training. I read a lot of books, and I got coaching, and I wanted to pursue public speaking. But the real breakthrough came in February 2017. Actually, it was February 6th, 2017. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a phone call. And when I got the news, it was a cold, snowy day. And my daughter Lena was 5 years old back then. And we were about to go out and have sledding, in the snow with our friends. She was right there, and I had to stay calm. And two things came to my mind. So, first was I need to stay strong for my daughter. I can't make her scared. Need to stay strong. So, that's the first thing. And second thing that came to my mind was this is going to be a great story. And I told myself, what? That's how I think? So I realized that storytelling or speaking is my calling. So I wouldn't say that was a gift. I mean, I can't say it was a gift. So breast cancer was the turning point for me that I decided I wanted to become a professional speaker.
Thank you for sharing this really inspiring story that shows your resilience also in times when things are not going that well. It's truly, truly inspiring. I actually did a bit of research on you in regards to what you have already done. And I found two books on Amazon Japan, which one is Motivate with Your Own Story, and the other one is the One Big Message. And those
Yes.
I've seen have also been translated into Chinese and even Korean.
Yep.
So I was really impressed to see that. Um, so you already have written several books on the topic, right? On cross cultural communication, and what inspired you then to write your new book, Uncover Your Message, and how did your own experience shape the content of the book?
Yeah. So those books, the Japanese books, and that are also translated into Chinese and Korean, they focus on presentation skills. The first book is about presentation skills, and the second book focuses on storytelling. So my inspiration for writing this book came from a gap I noticed in the existing literature on cross-cultural communication. Most books or even classes on this subject tend to be somewhat theoretical, which is valuable, but often leave readers without actionable insights that they can apply in real life scenarios. So for example, you may learn how people from high context culture, like Japanese, tend to use few words to communicate their intentions, and you'll have to read between the lines so that you can find out what's really being said. So, yes may be a conditional yes, or yes may not be a yes. Um, and although it's helpful to know that, how can you understand them more accurately, and how do you make yourself clear beyond this communication difference? So that's the most important part, right? So I wanted to create something different and something more practical, filled with real life examples that people can relate to and implement in their daily interactions, so business or personal. So that's why I decided to write this book.
Thank you for sharing. Now, your book Uncover Your Message highlights the concept of culture of one. How can understanding and embracing individual cultural layers improve communication in general?
Yeah, so I call this culture of one. So what it is when you hear cross culture, you would you would probably think that, oh, it's a difference between, let's say, Japan and US, or Eric, you're from Germany, so Germany and China, for example. Um, so, but the cross cultural difference is not just about the country and country difference. At the end of the day, we all have different values, different opinions, different upbringings, different communication styles, right? So it's like an onion. It's layers and layers of influences that formed in your your life, right? So your values may be influenced by your colleagues or your families, friends, or a school or teachers, right? So those layers form your own unique value system, and that becomes your culture. So at the end of the day, we are all different. So you have to drill down through those layers to the core which is yourself, your individual self. So that's what I call culture of one. So recognizing these differences helps in interpreting messages correctly, and it'll reduce miscommunication, misunderstandings, and mistrust.
Thank you. I want to encourage all the participants to ask the questions or put the questions in the comments, because we still have a couple of questions, but I would really like to get a Q&A session with Natsuyo to ask her all the questions that you might have. And also, please don't forget, at the very end we have a raffle or a drawing for a book signed by Natsuyo. So please stay till the end, and there will be a question, one of the details that Natsuyo has shared today, to answer, so you can win a book at the very end. Now, Natsuyo, coming back to you, what are some common challenges that you've seen professionals face in cross-cultural communication, and what practical steps can they take to address these issues effectively?
Your message clearly, right? So you want to focus on what I can provide. And that's important too. But what I call you focused approach is even more important. So you focused is you, listeners. What your audience is interested in. What are they struggling with? And what are the sticking points? What are the conflicts? And with that understanding, you focused approach, then you can sort of it's like a Venn diagram. You have this I focus message, what I want to say, but what you, the listener, want to hear, and the intersection is the most important message that resonates with the audience. So when you focus too much on I focus message, then it doesn't resonate with your audience. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I often see in professionals in any industry. And in order to have the you focus approach, you need to take the 3-step process that I call the 3 A's. So the first A is acknowledge. And I don't, well, but before I go into the 3 A's, let me ask you, Eric. So when you hear culture, and let's say you want to explain what culture is to your child, you have little kids, right? How would you explain it? Or let's say you're going to draw a picture of culture. What are you going to draw?
Uh, can I say an onion?
Okay, you read my book. What else?
A rainbow?
Rainbow. Oh, interesting. Why rainbow?
Um, because it has a very like a colorful aspect to it, and it also depends from which angle you look at it, and um, you might be able to find things or see anything in it that prior, when looking at a different angle, you weren't able to look to see that. So
Oh,
there's yeah, I don't know, I would have to
that's
elaborate, but the
yeah.
first thing that comes to mind besides the onion would be a rainbow.
Oh, that's beautiful. I've never heard anyone say rainbow. I've been doing a lot of trainings and keynotes, and I ask this question, and I actually have the audience draw an actual picture, and they usually draw like earth or foods, and clothing. But rainbow is beautiful, and it's also a bridge, right?
Hmm. And it's also not that
Yeah,
tangible. It's sometimes really difficult
yeah.
to it's
Oh,
like culture
I'm
is
gonna
not really
use that.
tangible, right?
I'm gonna start
Go ahead.
using that. So that's a great way, and my way, or um, in cross-cultural field, culture is often described as an iceberg. So what you can see is only the tip of the iceberg. And yeah, Ruth said globe too. Yeah, globe is what I usually get. So iceberg, you only see the tip of the iceberg. But there is a much, much larger piece hiding under the surface. And that's what the culture looks like. What you can see and hear are only the tip of the iceberg. But why they say what they say and why they do what they do are all hiding under the surface, such as unwritten rules, traditions, custom, and how things are done in my company as opposed to your company. So that's all hiding. It's not explained. Um, so culture is like this huge iceberg. So when you take the three-step process, the first step is to acknowledge that your iceberg may be different than mine. So, for example, someone was asking, can you give a specific example? So, let's say you say, well, someone proposes a challenging plan, and you would say, that's difficult. I know, Eric, you are familiar with Japanese culture and American culture and German culture, but if you are purely German in Germany, how would you interpret that's difficult
It's still
for the German
doable.
head? It's still doable, right? So let's do it. Challenge is great. Let's make it work, right? So if you're so put a Japanese hat this time. If you were Japanese, how would you take it?
It's impossible.
Right, right. This person said, "Oh, that's impossible." So there is a huge interpretation gap. For Japanese, it means, well, that's difficult for us to do. So we must consider different scenarios so we won't fail. So right now, I'm saying no, but I don't want to be rude and disturb the harmony of this group. So I'm saying this in a very, very indirect way. So please read between the lines. So that's
Can
what,
I
yeah,
can I
that's what
share
it
one
means.
personal story? Sorry to
Yeah, yeah,
interrupt.
yeah,
Real
yeah.
real quick.
Please do.
It's such a coincidence that you mentioned that, me being German and working with Japan. So at one of my first internships in Japan, it was at the German pharmaceutical company called Bayer. They make aspirin, and there was the German CFO, the chief financial officer, and he was in the boardroom with all the directors and VPs of the different divisions. And there was the Japanese marketing director, and the CFO was assigning the budget for the different divisions. And he was saying to the marketing director, Nakano-san, I still remember his name. So, can you work with that budget, because that's all we can assign this year? And he said, it might be difficult for you,
Mm.
difficult for me, difficult for all of us. So the German CFO was like, okay. And then he went to me and said, Mr. Ahorner, so you know more about Japan. So he said it's difficult, but that basically means that he can still, it's not impossible, right? So I can assume that that was okay. It's like, mm, from a German point of perspective, for sure, it's still doable, but not from a Japanese point of perspective. He even like, I think he wanted to make it super clear at saying it's not only difficult for me, it's going to be difficult for you and difficult for all of
Right.
us.
Yeah.
So to include everyone. So just to give you like a personal
Yep.
story about
Yep. Yeah,
difficult and
exactly.
impossible.
Yeah. So I mentioned the word high context earlier, but just to briefly explain, um, there's a high context, low context concept that I explained in my book too. And this was originally introduced by Edward Hall. And what it means is there are two extreme ways of communication, high context and low context. And in the high context culture, it's also called the culture of inferences. So only a few words are used. So you make inferences to understand what it really means. But in the low context culture, it's a culture of verbal messages. So it's more direct and logical, and and you pretty much explain word by word what you actually mean. So Germany is the far end of low context culture, and Japan is the far end of high context culture. So when there is a huge difference like that, the iceberg, the hidden part of the iceberg, is really huge. That you really have to understand that there is a difference between your communication style and my communication style. So that's I'm explaining in really lengthy about acknowledge, but it's really important to have this first step of acknowledge to understand that your iceberg is different than my iceberg. So that's the first step. And then second step is to analyze where the difference is and how big. And in this book, I introduce high context, low context, and also another famous cross-cultural model called Hofstede model. And I'm not going to go into details, but with these tools, you can systematically approach the communication differences that are kind of vague, but you can gauge where the difference is and how big. So with that understanding of where you are and where the other person is, then you can see where you need to make the biggest adjustment. So that's the third step, adapt. So you adapt your communication so that you can meet them where they are. So when we say cross-cultural communication, it's a huge topic. And I don't know who's asking this question. It just says LinkedIn user. Can you give an example of a breakdown in cross-cultural communications? Is it in the feedback or ideation process? So I break it down into three dimensions. One is one-to-many communication, which is presentation, when you're giving a presentation to a global audience. And second, it's one-to-one, giving feedback, or it could be a more intimate conversation. And three, it's one-to-team. You as a leader managing your team, which becomes facilitation skills. So presentation, one-to-many, and one-to-one communication, and one-to-team, which is facilitation. So those are the three dimensions that I break it down to.
Awesome. Um, that's really valuable. The acknowledge, analyze, and adapt, to have those three A's. And I wanted to ask if there is any um, a real life example where you can show well, let's say an application of the three A's process or your storytelling technique that really has improved cross cultural communication in personal life. Is there an example that you might have?
Yeah, I do. Um, and let me get to some of the questions I have. So Kevin is asking, is it important to be inquisitive and ask questions to break out of the you-centric culture? Ah, okay. So I was going to reveal that at the end. So I'm talking about the three A's, right? But there's a fourth A, that's a bonus A. So that A is a key to break out of the you-centric culture. So maybe I'm going to save it to the end. So let me go back to your question, Eric. Real life example of effective storytelling, right?
Yes, either three A's or effective storytelling, a real life example where it has really improved cross cultural communication in real life.
Yeah. So I mean, storytelling is such an important way to connect with people, right? So that's a universal language, whether it's uh, across different cultures or different generation. So I consider a different generation to be cross culture because they let's say my daughter Lena is 12 years old. um, Her culture is totally different, right? um, not only because she's half Japanese, half Jewish, growing up in America speaking two languages, but her generation has a totally different culture. um, so when you talk to your children or someone much younger, you know, or from a totally different environment, I think power of storytelling is so crucial to bring you and the other person on the same ground. So, for example, my daughter, Lena, is 12 and she's a figure skater. And she just went to the national competition, and it was an emotional roller coaster. She wanted to quit figure skating at the beginning of this year, but she persevered, and we talked and talked and talked about the future, her future as a figure skater, and what she wants to do, what she doesn't want to do, what it takes to become successful in life overall, right? Um, and it's easy for you as a leader or as a parent to tell your children or your subordinates, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it, right? But if they don't feel it, they're not going to listen. I mean, maybe they'll listen to you, but they are not going to be all in. So to break through that wall, I think the storytelling has such power. So when I was talking to Lena about figure skating, one of the challenges she had was the perfectionism. She felt like she needed to be perfect, she needed to be presentable, and she didn't want to try anything that scares her. So I would share my story, multiple stories about how I used to hate public speaking and how I failed and how I got fired from my miscommunication, which you're going to read in my book, and what kind of conflicts I had and what kind of struggles. And I still feel intimidated sometimes to talk to someone I've never met before, and yet I practiced and I went out of my way to really push myself hard to overcome my obstacles. And now I'm a professional speaker. And I'm not perfect, far from perfect. And I have a long way to go as a professional speaker. But, that's my journey, right? So I shared my story with Lena. And then she was like, oh, you, of course she didn't say anything, but her facial expressions told me that, oh, I thought, Mom, you are high achiever, and you're perfect, and you're a professional speaker, and you have all the glories, so I thought I had to be like you, but I didn't know you went through those hardships, and I didn't know you felt that way, and insecure and frustrated and scared. So she I think she felt that it's okay to feel fear, and it's okay to get intimidated, and that's normal. So I think at the end of the story, she felt a lot more relieved, and she felt a little more confident and more comfortable, and her mind opened up a lot more. So story has such a power to open up people's hearts. If there's a tight door in everyone's hearts, storytelling is a key to unlock that door. And when the door opens up, your message goes straight in to the other person's heart. So storytelling is the key to open a door.
And I think you gave us a perfect example when you opened with your personal story in the first 10 minutes of this call, right? I think you can see, based on the comments, the reactions of everyone, that everybody felt a deeper connection with you because you opened with a story that people could relate to, which was very personal. So,
Yeah.
perfect example of that.
Thank you.
I want to close.
And
Sorry.
I also see one more question from Ruth. Can you give us an example in the workplace on how we can undo mistakes we may have made with cross-cultural communication? So yeah, that's a challenge, right? So cross-cultural communication, it's a trial and error. You can't, maybe you want to get it right in the first place, but that's difficult. I mean, it's communication, it's fluid. So that's why the three-step process becomes so important: acknowledge, analyze, and adapt. So um you keep you know going through that process like a loop, and it's a trial and error, and you get closer and closer to find the fine balance that way. So in in a high context culture, and also more collective culture that I'm not, well, you'll find out what that is in a book, but in a culture like Japan, right? It's so hard to accept your mistake, not alone verbalize your mistake, especially if you're a leader. It's really hard, right? Um, but at the same time, it's so important to, Ruth, I'm going to use your word, unhide and show your vulnerability. To do that, I think storytelling is a great way um, to undo mistakes. Well, you acknowledge your mistakes, and you use that mistake as a learning process. And if you're a leader, I think people want to follow you when you're genuine and authentic. And if you are so powerful and strong, and it's all about me, and authoritative, that's one way of leadership. But in cross-cultural environment, especially in workplace, you need to be more facilitative, and you need to be adaptable. You need to be strong enough to show vulnerability. So I think storytelling has a power to mend all those gaps and mistakes. And if you can share your story, which has your mistakes and your learning that you can share with everyone else, then I think that has power.
Beautiful. I want to end or close the interview with one question looking ahead. What trends do you see emerging in the field of cross cultural communication, and how can businesses prepare for these changes?
That's a big question. So many of you might be thinking about AI. Um, you know, can AI close a communication gap? Yes and no. If you're only looking at the language part of the cross-cultural communication challenges, then yeah, AI can help the language barrier. You can simultaneously translate. There's a in Japan. Eric, have you heard of this Pocket Talk? It's like
Yes.
a little device, right? A little tiny device that you speak into, and this device translates what you said simultaneously. So something like that, or even, I don't know, some AI would definitely help the language barrier. But cross-cultural communication is a lot more than the language issue, just like I experienced when I first came to the US. So it's the why part of the iceberg, that the part of the iceberg that's hiding under the surface. Why people say what they say, and why people do what they do. AI can't really analyze or dig into the iceberg. Only human can do that. And only human can acknowledge the difference, analyze, and adapt. So cross-cultural communication is an art form. So we do see a trend of AI taking over a lot of workforce, and it's innovating many parts of or processes of what we do in business. But still, I think communication is an art form that only human can really grasp, right? So I think the communication, the verbal communication or nonverbal communication, the human touch is still really important. So because AI and machines and all the technologies are advancing, because of that, it's become more important for us to learn how to connect with people heart to heart with our communication skills.
We have here the question if AI is the fourth A after acknowledge, analyze, and adapt.
No, it's not. It's not. Um, so the fourth A is somewhat related to what Kevin said earlier. The fourth A builds the firm foundation of the the three-step process that I call the three A's. So the fourth A is attitude. So what kind of attitude? Yes, and attitude. We face differences in cross-cultural environment, and it's so easy to say, oh, they're wrong, or we do it this way, so you have to learn how, you came to our country, you came to our company, so you have to learn our way, right? But when you face differences, it's really important to be curious about the differences. Oh, why is this person saying it this way? Let me figure this out, right? So, but to tell you that be curious is it sounds easy, but it's actually difficult because we're programmed to think, oh, my way is the right way, so they must be wrong, right? So when that happens, catch yourself and tell yourself, yes, and. So yes, and is a concept often used in improv industry. Um, this is a concept when you receive some information that's different than yours, and accept it and build upon it. So it's easy to say, yeah, but, or no. But instead of that, oh, that's interesting. Yes, that's interesting. And if we do it this way, it's gonna be interesting. Yes, your opinion may be different, and my opinion is this and this. And if we can come to a, a consensus, we're gonna build a great team. Something like that. So having the right attitude, that's the fourth A. And what's the right attitude? That's yes and. So yes and attitude builds the solid foundation to exercise the 3A of effective cross-cultural communication.
Great. I think we can move into Q&A, and I think we have time for two questions. So the first question comes from Root, and her question is, can you give us an example in the workplace on how
Yeah,
we
I,
can
I think
undo
I
mistakes?
answered that
Oh, you
question.
answered that one already. My
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. As we were going through, I was answering some questions. So we
Okay.
covered that.
Then
And
the then the other question is from Kevin. In the past, Japan's rigid corporate culture offered little room for mistakes. Has that changed?
hmm. Well, um, I would say it depends on the industry, but I don't think it changed that much. What's your experience, Eric? You have been doing a lot of businesses with Japan, right?
Yeah, so it
How do you feel?
from personal experience, it depends if the people have experience with foreign companies already, or they've already worked abroad. Then that might be the case. But if it is still, so for example, a distributor that had an unpleasant experience with a company 50 years ago, and the person in charge has changed 4 or 5 times, they will still know that this one company was an unpleasant experience to work with, and 50 years
Mm,
later they might still remember that. So
yeah.
there is still, in traditional sense, very little room for mistakes. So um, it's a very different cultural business culture
Mm,
approach than in the US.
right. So that's part of the uncertainty avoidance tendency that I talk about in my book. The Japanese culture doesn't want any mistakes or surprises or risks. Yeah.
I fully agree. Great. I think we can move on to. I see there are not more questions except so in the comments, and I think we've reached also the time to move to the raffle. And the
Yeah.
question for the book drawing is, so get your keyboard fingers ready, everyone, in the comments. When did Natsuyo come to the US for the first time? How many years ago? It's a number. How many years ago did Natsuyo come to the US for the first time? So let's see.
So the first three
If
people who got the answer right will get the free book.
let's see if people remember that.
How many years ago did I come to the US? Numbers, please. Let's see.
I see everybody's think. Oh, so we've
Oh,
got a first
Cindy.
winner. We've
Oh,
got a second.
29,
We've got a
29.
second winner.
Oh, so we know 29 is the right number. So the third person will get it right.
That's true.
Okay, so the question was 29, how many years ago, right? So Kevin, you got it right, but how do we do
I
this?
think we I
The
think we
question
have
was
the
how many
first three
years ago?
winners. So Cindy, Root, and Kevin just gave the year. So I would say
Yeah,
Cindy, Root, and Harumi, to be fair.
Harumi. Yes. Kevin,
Okay.
49. Oh my gosh. I'm only 50, 52.
No book for you, Kevin. No.
No book for you. No. um, well, congratulations. So I'm gonna write down who got the questions right. So who are they again?
So
Cindy,
it's Cindy, Root,
Cindy,
and
Ruth,
Harumi.
and Harumi. Congratulations. So I'm gonna reach out to you, but feel free to reach out to me and provide your mailing address so that I can mail you my free book. And for those
Awesome.
of you who are willing to purchase the book, it'll go out tomorrow. And I was going to share the discount.
Not so you're breaking up, I think. You froze again.
Don't know how long they're going to run the campaign, but if you're going to Routledge or Amazon is also following Routledge's campaign, so it's already 20% off. So you can go into Routledge or Amazon and purchase the book with 20% off today. And on Amazon, only 4 left. So people are already buying. Well, thank you so much. So if it runs out on Amazon, you can definitely go into routledge.com and purchase the book. It'll start shipping tomorrow.
Congratulations again, Natsuyo, for the book launch, and this has really been amazing. It's been a honor and a pleasure to ask you some uh, really deep questions about cross-cultural communication and your background. And everyone, if you haven't done so, pre-order the book ASAP, and I know I will. So thank you for everyone for participating, and feel free to ask any additional questions that you have for Natsuyo on her LinkedIn, and see you all next time.
So you don't need. Are we back? I was saying that
Y-
James was asking about the discount code. You don't need a discount code if you purchase now, or I believe until the end of this month. So go directly into Routledge and or Amazon, and the discount code is already embedded. So you don't need a specific code. All right. So thank you so much, Eric, for having a conversation with me, and thank you everyone for listening in. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts about my book, and please go out and buy my book today. And if you can leave Amazon reviews, that would be great.
Thank you, Natsuyo. Thank you all.
Thank you.